Since the pandemic started, the anti-Asian racism and hate crimes has went on rise for since it started. So it has been a year, and that impacted my community a lot. The Asian culture is very diverse. So let's not forget, other than East Asians, so the typical Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese, there are also South Asians like Indian, Pakistani, Southeast Asians. There's Filipinos. It's very diverse. I feel like I always try to be conscious of not being the ambassador of Asian culture, because it's not unitary. How, as people of all different backgrounds, can we come together to overcome this together? Because the anti-Asian racism isn't just simply anti-Asian, because it's still racism. So that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Creekcast. Today, another guest. That's four in a row by this point. Really special guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone, whoever who's listening. I'm very glad to be joining this podcast today. My name is Vicky. My full name is Vicky Zhou, and I am an author of a upcoming book called Through My Eyes, Exploring the World While Being Asian. And I'm so glad to be, it's such an honor to be invited to this podcast. It means a lot to me to have, international supporters from all around the world. So this is great. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah,
We're going
definitely.
to go deeper into your book later on the podcast, but right now we want to get your perspective on the whole anti Asian hate thing that's going on. It's been a really prominent topic in the last months. So we wanted to see what you thought about that and what's your take.
For sure. I feel like since the pandemic started, the anti-Asian racism and hate crimes has went on rise for since it started. So it has been a year. And that impacted my community a lot. Personally, myself, I feel like a lot of time it's just emotionally draining. You go on TV, you watch the news, and you just see the elders from your community, women from your community just under attack. So that definitely takes a lot of mental stress and like emotion, just emotionally draining. But at the same time, I do want to emphasize that I feel like this kind of sentiment of xenophobia or racism against Asian people didn't just start because of or since the pandemic. It has been ongoing. It's historical. We can definitely get more into that. But I just wanted to stress that it didn't just start since a years ago. It has been built up. That's why it's becoming so prominent at this time. So we can go back to the historical roots of it later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, we're gonna touch on that. And I mean, we had an episode talking about it, but ultimately, like, it's not. We're not living through that experience and that situation. So it's gonna be very interesting to hear your takes and also the way that it impacts your community, as you said, because I mean, you live through it and you see it through different eyes than us, quite obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for our listeners, if you didn't know, we already have an anti-Asian hate podcast a few episodes ago. Check it out. But now we're getting an outsider's perspective that actually knows what's going on. So listen to the other podcast if you wanna get an idea of how we perceive it first, and then here where you can get a more educated perspective.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it a bit, but just before we go into the ad break, a little bit of how COVID and the whole pandemic has kind of exploited, I guess, in a certain way, this xenophobia and racism that's been going on recently. And yeah, I mean, what's your take on that?
I think recently it's it's very, I think politically, I think it's motivated politically because as you see in North America, I feel it the most. I mean, in the US, you see how the high up politicians, presidents spoke about this virus, and they associate it with entire group of Asian American people. So that is just very detrimental to those people who have to live in that country on the daily basis. And I can say luckily or fortunately, but not so lucky. But I live in Canada. I live in Toronto. So that experience is a little bit different because there's no such nationwide, from our president or from our prime minister speaking of COVID-19 in such a negative connotation against Asian people. So I feel like lucky in the sense that we didn't have that direct impact on us. However, societally, like socially, there has been a lot of hate on Asian people. I have seen a lot of videos and news of our Asian people, our Asian elders being attacked or verbally abused, and that is just not acceptable. And that's the reason why I wanted to write my book at this unique timing, because I just think it's so important to speak about this, and we cannot wait any longer. It's very urgent. It's very pressing.
Yeah, it's in any time. I think now it's the where we need more people like you. Like right now, it's the toughest time for a lot of people, and now with the added pressure of these cowards just right out assaulting elderly people, it's becoming a whole mess. But before we delve deeper into these concepts and talk about more about your book, we're going to go into a quick ad break. As you know, dear listener, uh, everything here, every single cent that we gain because of the ad break goes to the charity of the week. We don't keep any of the money. It's all non-profit, so don't worry. We ain't using you for money, I swear.
We're not exploiting you. So yeah.
Quick ad break. Welcome back, people, from that little ad break. Remember, share with your peers, your mom, your dad. It really helps us out. Check out our Instagram, just in case, if you didn't already follow us. And right now, we're going to continue, and now with some interesting questions. Hope you can answer them. Hell yeah. So...
Let's go.
Oh yeah. So our first question is: could you explain to our audience what's your book about and why did you decide to write it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to explain anything about my book. So I had this idea about writing about Asian community, writing about my own experience since I started traveling around the world. I went to a lot of parts of the world for volunteering. I did a lot of teaching, language teaching. Just along the way, I discovered a lot of different cultures and people from different backgrounds. So I always wanted to write about my own experience. However, it wasn't until the start of the pandemic I personally experienced something like when I visit a local cafe. Someone said something to me, just instantly pointed out that, oh, you're Asian. Do you carry the virus? And that was like a waking moment for me. I was like, wow, so I can be that easily exposed to that kind of attack or like racial slurs. So I feel like a lot of Asians at that time or at this time experienced very similar experience as well. So I wanted to share that sentiment with my Asian community, and I also wanted to share with across other racial communities, showing them that we can all work together. We can build allyship, and we can overcome this together as one community. So in my book, I wrote a lot about my own stories about traveling the world and my encounter with different cultures. At the same time, I also wrote a lot about going into the roots of how this anti-Asian xenophobia started and how, as people of all different backgrounds, can we come together to overcome this together. Because the anti-Asian racism isn't just simply anti-Asian, because it's still racism. So that if racism exists, then that affects or impacts all people. So we all have to work on this together so we can help each other out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, actually, it reminds me of something that Huerta said at one point, where in the in the episode where we talked about this, he said it isn't like races against races, and it's not like specifically just races. It's everybody against racism, because I mean, this is just like a specific branch, if you could call it like that, that has just like exploded over the recent months. And I mean, yeah, it kind of leads on to the next question, which is why a book like this is important. First of all, why it's important, and second of all, why it's important at this time and age.
For sure. I think at this, to be honest, I started to form my idea about writing this book during the pandemic, and also when I saw the rise of Black Lives Matter movement. That's when I was very inspired. I saw how Black people here organized their community, started a movement, how they also mobilized other people of color to join the fight, or white people to join the fight as allies. So that really encouraged me to feel like, hey, maybe I can also raise my voice and to tell my stories and also encourage other people to join my activism. You know, how Black Lives Matter movement started was just three Black women in the US. They had this idea to, um, we need to show our activism to support or empower our own community. So I feel like my book is kind of a form of my activism. It's a call for, people to join it, people to also read about my experience. So I think this book is very important because it is a call to action. It is a call to invite people into this activism to support the Asian community, especially at this unique time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, very well said. Honestly,
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Like we previously said, it's a really important time to have a focal point and someone to lead these kinds of movements. And I personally think that a book, it's a perfect way to start. Like it really can evolve into something deeper.
Yeah, definitely. And
Like,
the more outlets and people like you that are outspoken and bring their experiences as well, it helps to kind of put each other in each other's shoes. So I think, yeah, it's really important to have that, especially nowadays.
definitely. And I was just gonna say, just look at how having this conversation brought us together. Like, if it's not because of the book, I would probably never have met both of you. I would
Yeah,
probably chance to get on your podcast and talk about this. And you see how you also help me, you guys being allies for the community, you also help me to spread my voice to outside of my country or outside of North America, you know? So so it's very important. I feel like you guys are also helping me to spread awareness as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is all about. Just spread
yeah,
awareness and make people smarter every day.
Hmm.
yeah.
And so yeah,
Precisely to offer a platform to people like you. So thanks for coming on.
Sure, thank
it's
you.
been a pleasure. So, speaking about this book, we may love it even though we aren't even involved or have read it. But I believe that there's people who might find it controversial. And do you have any idea why that might be?
I think right now, just thinking about the sentiment that's still shared by a lot of people, there's still a lot of haters, I would say, out there thinking, oh, let's blame China, let's blame Asian people for bringing this virus to our country or stuff like that. I just think, to be honest, I don't pay too much mind to people who have that kind of comment, because I feel like if I just focus on one thing, which is empowering my community, which is to bring more allies into to join this movement. I don't think those noises in the background really mattered, even though there will be criticism. There will be people who are like, "Oh, you are just writing about the Asian people, then you're just Asian power," stuff like that. But I feel like yes. true. I am trying to bring power to my community. So those controversials, I don't really think of them really mattered. I think they're just noises in the background. But at the same time, I do have a response to those potential criticism, which is that I'm not just writing about or writing for the Asian community. I'm writing about how to also include other people of color, how to empower other people of color, which is, and also to fight together for equality and for social justice, which is for all, which is for the better of the society. It's not just, segregating people into groups based on their race. So that's what I'm not trying to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of activists fall into that trap of trying
Mhm.
to segregate races, and it's like just the single word segregation isn't something you want to be associated with. So I think
No.
I can speak for both of us when we can say that we're really happy to hear
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
moving.
which something that we've come across a lot recently, and something that I personally didn't know about, but it seems like it's just every time we bring on a guest, it keeps on happening where intersectionality is like the big theme, and it's just been really interesting, and I completely agree. I mean, the people who hate are probably not the most intelligent people, to be honest. So at the end of the day, they just have to be voices that you kind of block out.
Mhm.
Um, but it does make me question, because I suppose I don't know what it's like to be an author and to the whole process of making a book. But I was curious to know if you've received any backlash when writing it.
Um, Actually, guys, surprisingly, all the response that I have been getting, which is positive, which became my fuel or my support, my motivation to keep going. Because surprisingly, I was expecting maybe someone would say something, especially, at this rise of anti-Asian xenophobia, racism. Maybe someone would send me a message or something just to, trying to step me down. However, I do have to say, overwhelmingly on my social media, in my friend groups, in my circles, it has been pure positivity, which is really great to see. I feel like once, maybe I would say, when the book becomes bigger, being featured on bigger platform, maybe there will be backlash or maybe there will be criticism. But again, I would I would deal with that when that comes along.
One
But at the
problem, yeah.
right, if I treat my activism with positivity, with, my goal is to empower. So if there are backlashes, I will deal with that, but I would say I have to, keep my focus straight, which is to empower my community and include support more other people of color.
Because that's what's all about, right? Like, as much as you receive criticism, which is often okay, like just makes you better at what you're
Oh,
doing. But yeah, just those hate comments in general, you just have to block them out as their voices, because the second that you give them attention and try to
mm,
play with their ideas, that's when you give them power. Like they don't start with that kind of
mhm.
interactions. You are the one giving it to them. So
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I welcome criticism.
yeah,
I love to, right? I love to have conversation with people who probably have different mindsets, different ideas. However, let's have conversation. Let's not make it an attack on each other's, as a person. Let's welcome a conversation. We can all talk. We can all share our opinions. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, really well said,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. What else can you say to the haters, right? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
with
block
them,
them out.
maybe just, yeah, block it out if that really doesn't matter to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So literature in general, it's the stepping stone of humankind, and the way that we have been brought up in many ways, and how
Mm.
humanity has been sustained. So, what importance do you think it has, and what's the power that comes with the responsibility of writing literature?
Oh, for sure, guys. I can talk days about this. I really think, social media makes everything very easy. We can go on a live chat, have like an hour conversation. maybe it will have some impact on people, but still it goes away. People get distracted by so many stuff that they see on screens. So I would say the power of literature is that it really lasts, unlike other social media or like, being featured on For You page on TikTok. Those are like 5-10 seconds information. But the power of writing is because it really lasts. It can really sustain in history. So like I think I've also kind of covered my favorite book in this session. So during quarantine, that sat down with myself, did a lot of readings. Like for example, Minor Feelings, written by Kathy Park Hong, which is an Asian American writer, and also We Gon' Be Alright by Jeff Chang. So they wrote a lot about the racialized groups, Asian community, well, in the context of America, but also it's relevant to Canada as well. So those books, I feel like reading them gave me idea of how I want to write my book, or what kind of stories I want to tell in my book. So I think, yeah, literature is really powerful for people's mind to inspire people to do their own good as well. And as I just recommended, two good books. I hope people can check it out.
Give them a read. They sound really interesting. Another book for our collection of the Quickcast reads. Yeah, we need to get going on those.
Oh,
Uh,
Yeah,
so
oh,
yeah,
and
because we're just like I mentioned a lot of the American authors. There's actually a local Toronto or Canadian author called Desmond Cole. I think he's an African descent, so African Canadian. He wrote a book called The Skin We're In. Which is very interesting. It focused on the Black people in Canada. However, it's also touched on a lot of issues about race, about policing in a context of Canada, or North America in general. So that's also very.
yeah.
yeah, for
So
sure. So every listener, check it out.
check it out. Sounds really like a really good listen. If it's recommended, why not? I mean, you have free time. It's quarantine still, so yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So um, ultimately, you kind of described that the pandemic came through and it kind of inspired the book. And I was also curious to know a little bit about how you have connected with your Asian heritage in the past and also in the present, how you constantly try to connect with it.
I love this question. I love it, and I love to answer it. So actually, I grew up in China the majority of the time, and then I moved to Canada for school, for university, and also I went to UK for a year for gap year. So I would say, ultimately, I was always growing up very connected with my Asian heritage and Asian culture, or to be specific, Chinese culture. So I think having a sense of connection with your own culture helps a lot for you to navigate yourself, to discover your own identity. When even when interacting with other people. So I'm always super proud that I have that kind of connection with my culture. And right now, I would say, because I'm writing this book, I feel like I am more aware of the Asian community in Canada now. Because before, when I did my readings, or when I went to university, um, I feel like it's always the American history, or like American sociology, political science is the focus, the center of all. And I feel like we need to contextualize it. For example, if now I live in Canada, I need to know what the Asian community has been, what the history is like in Canada. I mean, it's important to study about the politics in the US because it's so influential, but you also got to know the people around your community in that context.
yeah, we tend to focus a lot on the U.S. because those were a lot of popular problems stem for. But I completely agree. We need to focus on our own communities first and understand those problems. I believe our very first episode here was about racism and slurs that we use in Mexico. Well, not that we, like not us personally, but usually
Okay.
here in
Yeah.
Mexico. So yeah, it's a really big part of it. We tend to focus on, oh, I'm going to solve the world first but we need to focus on your own community first, and then you can stem out into the rest of the world.
Yeah, also part of it is understanding your community, because as you said, when you go into whether it be Canada or wherever really, and you come with a different understanding and knowledge of the roots or anything in general from the community, it ends up not allowing you to really experience it in the same way and give the same as much as you receive from them. So you have to be also really well versed in your community and understand where things come from and why things are the way they are.
For sure. No, hence, yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. Moving on to our next question. All this hate towards the Asian community has to stem from somewhere. Like, it just didn't rise from nowhere. So where do you think where's the focal point of all that hate?
Yeah, such a great question. So as I mentioned earlier, when we just started, I think we need to go back to history to see where it really started. So I think the Asian community in Canada, or I can say for North America in general, it started from when Asian people, or specifically Chinese people, when it first came to North America to help build the railway. In Canada, they built the cross-continental railroad in Canada from the West Coast. So that's how Chinese people came here as labor, that hardcore laborers. And a lot of them were treated very unfairly. So, for example, a white person can work with certain salaries or payments as in return for their labor. A lot of Chinese laborers, they have to work 3 times lower than the average, how much they're paid to a white person. And so that put a lot of them into poverty. And later on, when there are more Chinese people coming to the country for construction, for hard labor work, they were put into, they were actually heavily segregated into, that's why we have Chinatowns in all the big cities pretty much all around the world, not just in Canada, right? We all have Chinatowns. That's not because, well, partially because people like to stick together, they go elsewhere, but also because they're forced to stay within that small, dirty, little fort in the city. So a lot of it comes from that time when Chinese people were already excluded from the society. And I was also reading stuff about how the first Prime Minister of Canada spoke about how to treat Chinese people or how to treat Asian people. He specifically used a lot of racist language, just trying to prove the point that we cannot accept them as Canadians. We cannot accept them as a part of our country because they are just different race. They are basically, we are superior, or the white race is superior, and the other races, they are inferior. So a lot of those languages just form this idea that these people, they're foreigners. They should be excluded from the society. And that kind of language and connotation lasted until probably 50 years ago. Chinese people weren't allowed to be citizens of Canada. Even when a lot of them fought in the Second World War for Canada, they weren't allowed, after they returned from the war, they weren't allowed to become citizens. So I can go on and on, but I just really think it's that kind of sentiments that lasted, that excluded the people from society historically, and is ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about Chinatown like that. That was really interesting, and kind of as you say, like these things always stem from the way that they are portrayed in a way to the rest of the world, and I feel like it kind of reminds me a bit of the environment that was created after World War II, where especially in America, it was very heavily negatively seen as Japanese people. And usually, I mean, what do people do? They generalize and they put Japan in a box and they put the whole of Asia in a box, and then that's negative, and that kind of transpires into the rest of what you also mentioned as well. So it sucks.
Yeah, and the history is just so heavy. When you really go back, you'll see how, this thing is not just built in one day. It's days after days, and it still continue to impact a lot of people and their lives. So, yeah. And guys, are
Yeah.
we recording right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Craig just left though.
Yeah, we lost one of our programs, but we have like 3 of them recording just in case. They're fail safes. So yeah,
Guys,
don't worry about it.
really heavy for him, and he had to really like relax a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the topic was just too much on his head.
Too much.
Too much. You gotta
Too much suffering for one butt. So yeah, okay, let me just sorry there. It's just you need to see the spike of the thing when I'm editing, so I know where to do the thing. So moving on to our next question, you being a person who is so closely related to the Asian community, we wanted to ask, apart from all the personal experiences that you've been that you've told right now, have you experienced any change or just general change in the behavior of people around you just because you're Asian, or what's the deal there?
There are positive and negatives. I think I can tell a story that I kind of mentioned earlier about since COVID-19. So there's I think it was in April last year. So that's when the COVID really just started, right? A lot of people were wearing masks. But because my Chinese families, they went through not a similar virus, but they went through something also a very widespread virus back home in China, like 10, 20 years ago. So they are very aware of the importance of wearing masks. So they kept telling me, like, wherever you go, you got to keep your mask on. It doesn't matter if other people are wearing, but you got to protect yourself. So that's what I did. I went to a cafe to get a cup of coffee in the morning. So I had my mask on. I went in, and then there was this elder white guy. He turned around, he saw me, and immediately, I mean, I can't hide these Asian eyes. Like, I have my mask on, but it's easy to tell. So he turned around and he was like, "Oh, you're Asian. Like, do you have that virus?" And he thought, I know, I was like face palm, literally. Yeah. And he just said it the way that he wasn't, it seems like he wasn't trying to even act rude. It just, he thought that was a genuine question, or he thought that was his sense of humor. He thought I was funny, probably. So then I was just like, no, I don't want to deal with this right now. Like, so I kind of like stepped back a little bit. He pursued. He still continued. He wanted an answer. So then I was like, no, if I had a virus, I wouldn't be here at all. I would probably be, quarantined in the hospital or something. So that was very uncomfortable. And he continued to make conversation about saying something about Indian people, saying something about how they also brought allergies into America or North America. So that was just not a pleasant experience. And I was blown because, to be honest, before pandemic, I never experienced something that's really in my face and trying to really have almost like have a debate. It was just very intense. So so that's the moment when I realized, oh, because of the pandemic, now my identity is being put at the forefront. I'm kind of, because of what I look like, people have certain assumptions. So that's when I realized, wow, what I look like and my identity really plays a part in how people interact with me. So that's a negative one. But I also have tons of positive ones, guys, because living in Canada is very fun. You get to meet a lot of people from different backgrounds. So those positive ones, we can talk more about them. But I think this one is a very unique one. So I wanted to share.
Like a staple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was coming and I wasn't surprised, honestly.
No, honestly, and so sadly, it's shared with a lot of Asian people right now at the moment. And I would even consider myself a lucky one because it didn't get violent. because I have seen a lot of news that that kind of conversation just led to violence, aggressive acts. So I'm actually lucky that I didn't go, south,
Yeah.
but that was just not comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just people who, I mean, I don't think he intended any wrong. Like he just was a genuine idiot, didn't know better.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's part of it. It's just very normalized, and yeah, I mean, that also kind of brings us to think. So obviously, with your Asian heritage, it plays a role as well as in everybody's lives where they grew up and how they grew up and the culture and all of that plays a role in the person we end up becoming. So I was curious to know how you feel that your Asian heritage and culture have made you the person you are. Also, kind of what you would like the world to see more about Asian cultures specifically.
Love it. Yes. Um, I think for my culture, let's say the Asian culture is very diverse. So let's not forget other than East Asians, so the typical Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese, there are also South Asians like Indian, Pakistani, Southeast Asians. There's Filipinos. It's very diverse. I feel like I always try to be conscious of not being the ambassador of, Asian culture because it's not unitary. There's no such um, thing. Well, it's Asian culture. A lot of things we share in common. Food or like a lot of even languages very similar. However, it's also very diverse. So let's also keep that in mind, right? But I'm also very proud, or I want people to see more of Asian representation on TV, entertainment. I feel like there's so much we can see. I feel like for the past couple of decades, it's always Jackie Chan, Chinese Kung Fu, right? Or more recently, it's the Japanese anime. But I also want to say the Asian culture people are very different, and I wanted to see more different individuals being featured on TV, different skin tones, speak different languages, have different cultural influence from their household. I want to see all of these. And actually, just a very quick note, there's actually the Marvel movie is going to have an Asian superhero. It's played by an
Yeah, I
Asian
saw
Canadian,
that.
right? It's played by an Asian Canadian. He's also from Toronto, so we're super proud of him doing his big moves. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, like an Asian man as a superhero. I think that's very exciting to see. I mean, I've never seen.
yeah. It's very different. I mean, especially Marvel, which is the biggest studio like with superheroes. It's something that maybe is a shock to the system in a way because you don't really see that a lot in mainstream media, and Marvel is as mainstream as it gets. I
Yeah,
mean, we're wondering when we'll see a Mexican superhero. So
Yeah,
Marvel, if you're listening,
right. If you're listening,
it's funny that you say that, not to spoil Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but right now, like today was the last episode of the series, and it ended with a lot of racial disputes. Because, well, I don't know if any of our listeners or you two guys are going to see the series, but quick spoiler warning now,
okay,
so you can skip a few seconds later. Uh,
okay,
yeah, so the Falcon becomes the new Captain America, like in the comics, and there's a whole uh, just speech and just the idea and themes of a black Captain America, because usually it's not what a person thinks about when he thinks Captain America. You think Steve Rogers, the blonde blue eyes guy,
and
and then it's like this guy, oh, he's black. It's a whole thing. So
mm,
it makes me wonder, is Marvel actually doing this because they care? Because it seemed genuine to me. Like I just finished the episode like a few minutes ago,
okay,
right before getting to this podcast. So it seemed genuine to me, but it's not rare for a company to just pander to a specific group of people because that's where the money's at. So let's
mhm,
hope that they keep this sense of being genuine all throughout, and I honestly am hyped for this series or movie. I don't know what it is, but I'm hyped.
Me too. You just made me more excited to watch it too. Yeah, I feel like it's really great to see representation, but as you said, it has to be genuine. And that's why I think it's also important to have these people of color sitting at the, director table, or, people at the high up making decisions. So to make sure that's not just a token minority, we want to put a Black person there just because we want to see a non-white person. So we don't want that. We want something more genuine that actually represents their culture, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just the classic like 1 month you just put like LGBTQ or Black Lives Matter, and then it's like you go against that the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like we've often, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see. They like pandering, so yeah. I think we just blew past the next question. I think that was exactly what we were going to talk about. So, Masa, if you will.
So yeah, now it's time for the famous big three. We ask these to every guest. So we'll start off with the first one. Who is the most inspiring person in your personal and professional life? Because sometimes it'll differ. But yeah.
Wow. You actually put me in place because I'm inspired by so many people. But recently I would say, let me think. For professionally, I do look up to a lot of authors and even lawyers who are outspoken. Recently, I have read a lot from Kathy Park Hong. I just think she's very outspoken, and also there is this celebrity. Her name is Jeannie Mai. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. I don't know if that's a big figure in Mexico. Probably not.
Not really.
So no, she's a very outspoken person on the real life, the what's it called, the talk shows. It's a good representation for Asian people on TV. Also, I would say actually she's Latina. Is her name is Sunny. What's her last name? Oh my God. No, she is on the talk show called the not the real the. Is it called The Real Talk Show?
It rings a bell.
Yeah, it does ring a bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was a former prosecutor, and now she is a talk show host, just talking about a lot of racial, social issues, and I think she's very outspoken. I'm always very inspired by outspoken women. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think we get those types of answers. It's just a big person that's already out there and did a lot of change in their communities. It's fun to see the pattern there. We'll definitely check it out. Sounds really fun.
Okay, thank you.
So the next question in the big three, ironically, is what are your 3 main goals for the future?
For the future?
Yeah, it can be immediate future or long in the future, like some big goals.
Future, I am trying to beg another degree. I am trying to get into either law school or do a master in public policy, because I think those 2 industries can really make an impact to not just people around you, but also to like a wider society. So that's my immediate goal. Long term, I do want to do something that's more sustainable, and is also more supportive to my community, because I think this community needs to be more organized. There are a lot of people out there doing activisms and doing their thing, but I think in order to sustain that, it can't just be something that just happens overnight or for a few months, right? It has to be a longer term. So there has to be a more systemic change. Do want to do something bigger to support my community.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like very ambitious long-term goals, but we'll have you on back then and and have you talk about the difference you made in your community.
Yeah, we'll gladly have you any other time. So now you know you have friends at the Creekcast, you need help, we're here.
Yes, absolutely. I bet at that time probably you guys will have a much bigger platform too. There'll be a lot of people listening. So please do have me back, even when you become, popping. Happy to have.
Hell yeah.
So this kind of does lean into the big last question, the biggest of them all, which is, what mark do you want to leave on this world?
Wow, these are like one after another. They're like throwing really great. What mark do I want to leave at the world? I want to spread positivity. I think my main thing is that I want to see more allyship and solidarity among people of color. That's what I really want to see. I feel like, I can talk all about how to, empower Asian people, but at the same time, I think this change could really happen when all people of color come together, when they realize that we should no longer be divided or divisive based on the ideology of white supremacy, but we all should come together to the fight together. So I think that's a mark I want to leave at the end of this podcast, and also to the world. I want more people to just care for each other and start to, as what we're doing here, learn from each other, listen to each other. I think you guys are doing so great for reaching out to me, listening to me, just for talking for 1 hour. I think if we have time, I would love to have another chat with you guys to learn more about, what's happening in Mexico, what's happening in, Latin America. I think I would love to also have that conversation with y'all.
Yeah, whenever you can hear our other episodes, we have a lot on that. Thanks for your answer. Thanks for coming. We'll gladly have you any other time to listen to your points. It's a platform for the people, so whenever you want to hop in, we'll be ready to talk about anything.
I really appreciate it, you guys. This conversation has been so great. You guys are asking so many good questions that actually I feel like, wow, that I really need to, think about it and continue to think about these questions.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. Really, it's been a great conversation. It's been really interesting, especially since we did it on the earlier on some earlier episode where we talked about this. But having that perspective from inside is just it just changes everything, because we can't, like, two straight white males can't just give their opinion on everything. Nobody really needs more of those opinions.
Yeah.
So it's great to have guests and people like you to bring it on and talk about it.
I think after doing that episode, we both realized that the entire thing is just, it sucks. Racism isn't cool.
You know what? But more of this.
Just real talks with real people.
Really for people to be like, hey, white men or Mexican men, they can listen to a Chinese girl talking about their community, and vice versa. I think that really puts a great example out there. So thank you guys for doing your great work.
So thanks for you, listener, for sticking around so long. Or viewer, remember, we have a new YouTube channel already with all the episodes there, so be ready for more. Now everything will be visual. If you're on Spotify, you can check it out. If not, come on, dude.
Also check out all of the platforms for Vicky. Check her out on her Instagram, as well as I don't remember what it was. It a Patreon for your book?
For my book, it's While Being Asian. For my personal page is Vicky with an underscore and 7Z. 7 Z's or Z's.
So check it out.
Any of your listeners have a conversation, I'm more than happy to chat with them too.
Be on the lookout for new episodes and her account on our Instagram. So thank you so much for watching and listening. This has been the Creekcast, and that's all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Love to chat with y'all soon. Right now, I'll just have to hop on another the live chat, but I would love to continue our conversation next time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
so much. Take care.